Hello, I'm a chicken,
Hello, I'm Wolf.
and we're the founders of the Glacorian development team. If you're interested in knowing a little more about the both of us, please check out our previous episode of the podcast where we introduce ourselves, our hobbies, our professions, and why we want to share the story of the Glacorian universe with everyone.
We also shared a little bit of background about the state of the setting, briefly discussing some of the ongoing politics and taking a look at exactly what the tech level is in some parts of the timeline.
However, I was pointed out to us in the YouTube comments of last month's podcast, while we discussed the setting that Glacorian development is working on, we neglected to talk about what exactly it is that we are. That is Glacorian development.
Yeah, the exact question comes from YouTube user HatterDemad, and he says, or they say, for the guy who stumbles across this podcast and knows absolutely nothing but is interested in knowing what this is all about, could you explain what your project is to a person with little knowledge? You guys clearly know your stuff. Unfortunately, I do not.
So, what our team does is author, program, and produce content for the Glacorian universe of our creation. We want to make a few games, including like a Blizzard-style RTS, real-time strategy, a Paradox-style grand strategy game, maybe even a Stardock style, such as similar to Galactic Civilizations, which is a turn-based grand strategy game. A few Call of Duty style first-person shooters, and top-down exploration games like Cogmine or Heat Signature, to list a few.
We also do some modding to popular games like Stellaris, Hearts of Iron 4, and there are some RimWorld mods that are shelved but effectively still in the works. As we've been sharing on our Patreon, we're also working on a supplementary tabletop role-playing game system that builds off of Paizo's Starfinder system. We've produced a few short stories to be shared on the r/HFY, or Humanity Fuck Yeah, subreddit, but we're looking to redirect ourselves to publishing our own short and full-length stories, novels, and films. All of this is done with the perspective of hard sci-fi, which, we can look at the definition, which is that hard sci-fi emphasizes scientific accuracy and logical consistency in its storytelling, often exploring real scientific concepts and theories and doing its best to remain grounded in plausible scientific principles.
A big driving factor for the development of our content has been community engagement from our Discord members. But every like, comment, and subscription, both here on YouTube and on Patreon, also gives us the push and inspiration to get us through. Our goal is to keep producing games, novels, and systems for the Glacorian setting that we discussed in the last episode. So, in effect, we're trying to be a development studio for a specific brand, which is a universe of our creation. Wolf and I have both worked on it together. Wolf is a long time. Wolf much longer. In fact, it's the brainchild of Wolf specifically, and then I joined later.
It's the child of my childhood.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get started into the lore questions for today, we'd like to make an announcement.
That's right. This is big news. I'm actually quite excited.
Me too. I've done a lot of work on this.
We both have,
Yeah.
but in recent months, I think I've been working on other parts of our project, and you've been putting in quite a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Not literally blood.
Yet.
Yet, he says.
So, as we've been developing our Glacorian story mod for Stellaris, we've reached a point where we would like to test it with some of our fans. We're going to be doing a server-wide open alpha test of the mod and its stories for our Discord community. So we'll be making a trailer for our mod when it's ready to be released, using footage and commentary gathered from the open alpha test, which will be released alongside the full version of the mod and our third Q&A episode sometime next month.
The Discord community is open to everyone, and the open alpha is free to join for all community members. This month, we have also released a small snippet from the closed alpha test we hosted on the 1st of February. And the link to that video is in the description of this one, so feel free to check it out. There's some good laughs in there. Now for the lore questions in this episode. We're going to answer some questions that have been sent to us through our Discord server. A link to the Glacorian development Discord server is in the description of this video. If you want to come check us out or get involved in the community, it's open to everyone. And we would love to have questions from more than just Duckaboo and occasionally Gang and M. Kirkla.
Beautiful questions. They've got some really good minds.
The most beautiful. Nothing is more beautiful than their questions.
No one's more beautiful than the most beautiful minds. You know, when they came into the server, I thought
I sure hope our listeners have a sense of humor, regardless of what side of the political spectrum they are.
Yeah.
That was meant as a
certainly.
joke. Not, please don't cancel us.
We weren't trying to be insensitive to recent events. Yeah. So, our first lore question for this month is from Discord member Duckaboo, who we answered a question for in the last episode and hope to answer a few more in this one. His question is, how does FTL function in the Glacorian universe? FTL is faster than light speed.
So we've done our best to make sure that FTL operates as closely to our current understanding of it as possible. Our objective is to pursue, as stated before, a hard science fiction story rather than soft science fiction. So you can think of soft science fiction as, well, Star Trek, for example, Star Wars.
Or Star Wars,
Wars. Yes. Thus far, the most promising means of FTL that we could traverse theoretically are quote-unquote warp drives like the Alcubierre drive or a wormhole drive. We'll include a link to one of the articles we've drawn inspiration from in the description below. Right now it looks like Alcubierre drives are the most promising and quote-unquote accessible, but that word is used pretty loosely. Well, CERN, C-E-R-N, which I forget what it stands for, technically creates exotic matter every year. It's only a tiny number of particles, not nearly enough to build an Alcubierre drive, even if we were able to collect the compatible particles.
CERN is a French word, actually. It's an acronym for a bunch of French words.
Yeah.
It's Conseil Européen pour la Recherche Nucléaire, and I've definitely butchered that, and the French are gonna hang me up by my toes for that. But
who cares? They're French.
I think we'll cut that out in
post.
post.
No, don't do that. Are you implying that the French don't have a sense of humor?
They have the best humor.
Oh
the best sense of humor. Back to the question.
Yeah.
There are to further answer, there are some minor in-universe features of FTL that either don't exist in reality that we're aware of, or, like I say, are just unknown at this time. So one of these features is that gravitational fields, such as large planets or so on, disrupt the Alcubierre drive fields of our setting, thus pulling an object propelled by one out of FTL and down to subluminal speeds. While those objects would still collide with whatever's pulling them out with significant force, it prevents a single Alcubierre drive propelled tungsten rod from annihilating a planet like the rods from God.
Yep.
Was that Ronald Reagan who wanted to do that? Or?
I think so. I think it was part of the Star Wars plan. The military has had the idea for a while. And
then it's in G.I. Joe as well. Yeah. And the reason why that's part of our lore is because those kinds of weapons just aren't fun.
Yeah. Similarly, wormhole drives are not able to jump within a certain distance of a gravitational field. In the single story we've written thus far, this restriction required that ships jump to the fringe of a star system. In addition, wormhole drives require a quote-unquote wind-up period that allows them to discharge some percentage of their stored energy. The more energy released, the farther the jump, but also the longer it takes to wind up again.
Unlike a wormhole drive, an Alcubierre drive wouldn't be forced to exit FTL until they were farther within a system. So while not explicitly mentioned, it's conceivable that Alcubierre drives and wormhole drives could be combined into a single drive that permitted both forms of travel interchangeably, with especially long-distance jumps preventing the use of the Alcubierre version of the drive until some minimum wind-up period had passed.
Yep. Alright, Duckaboo asked a follow-up question to this. Are there specific buildings or architecture quirks of the form of FTL that the Glacorian universe uses?
So, these drives project a field, and a quote-unquote field. The drive has to be able to project that field to include the entire ship. Otherwise, you're just going to rip the ship in half. Half of it's going to get propelled, and half it's not. This could require a large central drive that can only be safely discharged if above a certain power, or it could be a series of smaller synchronized drives arranged in a circular pattern around the ship. So, in terms of building quirks, there are FTL gates, like infrastructure, that you drive your spaceship up to, that are built this way with a circular ring of drives.
Yep.
And I think we've discussed before the concept of commercially owned FTL gates, where you drive your ship up and you have to pay a ticket and get your ship launched, and you have to line up like a subway.
Yep. That would make sense in a partly or mostly private-run economy rather than command or public-run economy.
Yeah, and we want things to be as public as, as private, as empowering the individual as much as we can.
Yeah.
So, now we move on to a question from Mankerkler. As we mentioned in the previous episode, M. Kirkler joined our Discord server after playing an earlier version of our mod for Solaris. And the question is, one of the lore documents mentions the Shogunate evacuating the entire population of Earth. Did this involve airlifting several billion people, or had other things caused Earth's resident population to nosedive prior to this point? And if so, what?
So that's a good question. So this refers to an event that occurs in June of 2430 in our abridged timeline document, shortly after the newly discovered Gamolans tell the Glacorian Shogunate about the incoming Cathorian threat. So the answer to this is partially yes, partially no. Future Strategos Jade Rosic, who was born on Earth in 2422, was herself airlifted, as you say, off of Earth and had to be relocated to Proxima b. Several billion were indeed displaced this way, although everyone was given a home and financial compensation on another planet. However, Earth was also already a military stronghold at this time. The headquarters of the Shogunate, because of its centricity within the currently occupied territory, and so most of the employed population actually remained, but was sworn to secrecy. Jade Rosic is again an example of this, as she was separated from her father due to her role as one of the many...
His role.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right, his. Due to his role as one of the many vital engineers that elected to stay behind and remotely support his family. She was reunited with him in 2450 when she became head strategos and was allowed to revisit Earth. Let's see. Our third question comes from Discord member Gang, who has so far... you already know it's some shenanigans because it's Gang.
We love Gang.
who has so far asked us some rather profound and thought-provoking questions. This month's question is, how many microplastics are in the testes of Glacor And Gang and Gang has given us a link to some pretty interesting research findings that would be worth checking out. The link to that will also be included in the description.
So, it's a funny question, but actually something that we can look at very seriously. My first,
it has
implications.
It has real-world implications.
Absolutely. So, in the spirit of humor, how many microplastics are in his testes? All of them. No. So if we look at it seriously, considering that Glacor was born on Mars, which is a wealthy iron mining world, the quantity of microplastics within his entire body would likely be significantly smaller than our modern-day Earth human population. It's not going to be completely zero, because microplastics are being passed on through the placenta, through fetal development. And to say that Mars is going to be totally free of plastic waste in the future is unrealistic, and that would be a false claim. So the most accurate answer to the question, without, getting into his minute biology, would be to say less microplastics than ours. Yeah.
Possibly much less, but certainly less.
Yeah. I wish I had less, but
Yeah. So now we'll go back to a series of questions asked by Duckaboo, again Duckaboo, about don't take that bad, Duckaboo. Your questions are great. It's just, as said before, it would be nice to have questions from other than Duckaboo and Kirkla and Gang.
The curious, the hungry minds of a large audience. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah. So, let's see. This is regarding interplanetary spaceflight mechanics within the setting. The first question is, how long is a trip from Earth to Mars generally on a Glacorian ship?
Well, yes, we just talked about Mars, didn't we?
Yep.
Since Earth and Mars don't share an orbital speed and distance around the Sun, they can sometimes be closer or further apart from one another. So this means that the time will vary, but as an estimate, the furthest distance that they are apart from one another, avoiding the fact that the Sun is directly between them, is 22 light minutes. So while FTL drives and FTL gates in 2865, which is the modern period of the Glacorian shogunate, are able to travel 1 light year in 5 hours, this amount of speed and energy consumption isn't necessary for such small distances. So the local gates that were set up specifically for travel between Earth and Mars were built by the USH shortly after the unification of the colonies.
Maintained and occasionally upgraded by the Glacorian shogunate, these gates can transport ships at about twice the speed of light between the two planets, or about 11 minutes when they are furthest apart. When the planets are closest, this is only 1 minute of travel time. Now, something occurred to me. This gives the... As we've been thinking about it thus far, transportation throughout the solar system has been thought of in roughly two-dimensional aspects. But space is three-dimensional, so why not set up every colony could potentially have their own FTL gate that just points someone to the quote-unquote above or below the
like a hub.
Yeah, above or below the sun, the solar plane, because we all orbit at roughly the same plane. And it could go there to that single point of hub, and then, quote-unquote, down back to the solar plane. And that would allow you to have you could have potentially faster FTL gates at that point.
So it's actually interesting. I was just watching a kind of dissection of space stations earlier this week, and it looked at Rami and or Rama.
Yeah,
Is it
okay,
Rama?
Rama. That is a world ship. Rama would be a
Yeah,
world ship.
world
Yep.
ships and orbital rings around planets, the Death Star, but most importantly, related to what you're talking about is the kind of massive orbital rings around the entire star that's livable, like a halo, but obviously a much larger scale. And there's actually a problem with that kind of architecture, that it's, even if it was spinning, it's not orbiting the sun, the star.
And because of gravity, it would always be pulled towards the sun. Without an orbit to push it out, it would have to spend energy, constant energy, to propel
Correct.
itself away. It would effectively have to maintain, since it can't use orbital mechanics, it would have to maintain distance
But
through propulsion. But a series of
hmm,
orbiting stations would allow that one was always available above or quote unquote above or below the solar plane.
so you could have these stations orbiting. Is it perpendicular? Tangential. No, it's perpendicular
Yep.
to the orbital plane of the planets, because all of the planets orbit the sun in a disk, or mostly
Most
a disk
a semi-disc.
formation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you could have it be perpendicular,
Yep.
going
Yep.
around the
And
sun.
outside or in
And actually, now
between
now that I
the orbits of other of the planets, so that it doesn't collide with any of them.
but now that I think about it, you don't actually need to have more than one, because depending. Oh no, because if you're on the exact opposite side of the star from the station, then you can't see it. But you could have two, and at no point would one of them not be visible.
Yes, that's correct. You could have two, and they could go.
Um,
They could orbit perpendicular to each other. Um,
hmm,
and the only time there would be occasional times when both would be on the solar plane, and so you couldn't reliably. That would be the period when you couldn't reach them from a distant planet because the other planets would potentially be blocking them. So basically, an eclipse situation. Um, but
yeah,
as long as they're above or below the plane, and there's two, and they're perpendicular to the solar plane and are perpendicular to themselves, then one should always be visible. Uh, should
that's
be
correct.
direct line accessible from as far as Pluto.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that would
So that's
so that you can't that wouldn't be effective for, like, if you're going from, say, Earth to Mars, or when they're unless Mars is on the opposite side of the sun than Earth, for example, um, because of proximity. But that would help with going from Earth to Jupiter. And the only way it would, I mean, I guess it could help if going from, like, Earth to Mars, or a near planet to a near planet, would be if the if that setup allowed for faster FTL travel to and from, so that you didn't have to have, so say two planetary FTL gates may not be able to propel um, each other faster than twice the speed of light, but then perhaps five times the speed of light if going to one of those stations and back.
yeah. So the example that I gave in the answer was specifically between
Yes.
Earth and Mars, and it's when it was built, it was twice the speed of
Yeah.
light, and in the modern setting, 2865, it's still twice the speed of light, because the Shogunate hasn't needed to upgrade it.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it's kind of viewed as, kind of, when you go to Europe, you go to like one of those old streets in, say, Italy, and
Yep.
it's still got the Roman road
Yeah.
with the original
Yeah.
stones. That's what it's like using this gate.
Okay. But that
But
was my
that's good.
thoughts.
I'd actually not thought of that.
Yeah. That I just thought of that while we're discussing that, and so that's something that could. It's not that that's something that could change how we set up the infrastructure when we represent it in any
Yes.
game or lore. Just change the infrastructure of a star system.
One of those mega structural design quirks that we were talking about earlier last week, actually.
Yeah, not megastructure as in stupid things like a Dyson sphere or a ring world, but megastructure in the sense of like how the vast network of internet of data carrying cables in the world is a
Mm.
megastructure, is a human megastructure, modern
Yep.
day, or the vast North American canals that carry irrigation water all over
Oh, yeah.
North America, um, and control flooding. That's a megastructure.
That's right. Um, but we're this episode's going to be quite a long
Yeah,
one.
because we
Uh,
got sidetracked.
so we just answered a question from Duckaboo about travel between planets. The second question, similarly in this vein, is can you share any details on the type of fusion thrusters used, or are other thruster technologies used instead?
So the form of thrusters used by various spacecraft within the Glacorian shogunate varies from use case to use case. Ion thrusters, like those currently employed by agencies such as NASA, though obviously more advanced and efficient, are common for automated spacecraft like orbital satellites or manned mining and maintenance vessels. Fusion thrusters are generally reserved for the bigger, more expensive, and more massive vessels like the Ship of the Lines. Alternative, more compact, and relatively less advanced forms of propulsion, including chemical propellant engines like jets, would still be utilized for some atmospheric traversal. Uh,
Yeah.
so the third and final question from this set is: are Glacorian ships able to land directly onto planets, or are they primarily orbit only? Do they have differing flight systems while in atmosphere? Any unique methods or quirks of ship landing?
Yeah, so we kind of touched on that in the last question. So yes, many Glacorian ships are capable of landing directly onto planets. The real issue is the cost. So it costs a lot of energy and fuel to take off and land on or off of a planet's surface, especially when done outside of the equator. I mean, it's a lot of energy. It's always cheapest to dock at the top of an orbital elevator outside of atmosphere when available, but the elevator can often take a day or two for passengers to reach the surface.
So some spacecraft are capable of traveling in atmosphere, but many are designed for takeoff and landing, making aerial movement difficult or inefficient. Any style of aerospace compatible transport is possible, but the real question is how much a citizen is willing to spend to utilize those functions.
Yeah, so a ship could have the chemical propellant engines, the
Yep,
jets, and fusion thrusters. Um, and so it uses the fusion thrusters to get out of atmosphere and the jets to move around in
yep.
atmosphere. But the fusion thruster is going to be very expensive. And so to have it installed alongside a jet system, you're like, well, why not just have a ship for in space that I just go and access at my orbital dock
Yes.
and use the elevator.
Yep.
But yeah, those are good questions that we like answering.
Yes.
Um,
Thank you very much, Duckaboo.
yeah, thank you. Now those were all through to us on our Discord server. A link to the Glacorian Development Discord server is in the description of this video. If you want to come check us out and get involved in the community, it's open to everyone. In addition, we will include a link to our Patreon for those interested in supporting our efforts.
If you have any questions or simply want to follow our progress as we develop media for this universe, please join us on Discord. If you want to support our efforts and can afford it, consider our Patreon. Thank you for listening.